Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Richest Men in Town podcast. I'm Mike Freeman, and along with my good friend and co-host Tyler Goold, we're excited to welcome you to our little podcast project. Tyler and I are just a couple of middle-aged husbands and dads driven to live our best lives. We want to be better every day, so here we'll be sitting down with great people. Not famous people, but great people that we admire, to learn their secret to living the rich life. Probably not the rich life you're thinking of. Our guests come in humbled and surprised at the invitation and hopefully leave feeling proud and grateful, realizing just how good they really have it. So pull up a chair, stay a while, and raise a glass with us as we toast our guests to the richest men in town.
Mike Freeman, another week of RMIT is in the books, and you know what? It ends up not disappointing as usual. Tonight we had my good friend Bryan Bunker on the show. What were your takeaways, man?
So I don't know if I've ever said this coming out of it, but I want to be like Bryan Bunker. I'm hanging out with this guy and I'm thinking, this guy is somebody that I want to emulate, right? And not only, I mean, he's in some places that I'm not coveting, but I'm looking at like, man, that would be kind of cool to make some of the changes that he's made. He talks about that. He lets us in on that process. But like, man, I dig what he's about, and I love his thoughts on influence.
Yeah.
And our role as parents, especially parents of older kids, and that's kind of the season that we're coming up on, in that idea, like it's 100% about influence. That's got me shifting some things in my brain. And anytime I can hang out with somebody that gets me firing neurons in a different way, I'm all about. I light up, and man, these 2 hours with Bryan Bunker is about that. He lights you up and he gets you thinking about things in different ways, right? I mean, that idea of palms up, open.
Yeah, be open. Yeah.
What if? Ask yourself what if instead of just like ruling things out. I mean, he's in a totally different place in his life because him and his wife are open to the idea of what if.
Yeah, I love that thought as well. And he talks a lot about comparison, right? And sort of the downfalls and the dangers that come with comparison, and which is interesting, right? We referenced again, you know, our condolences to the Lowry family with the loss of Quinn's dad, but Quinn, when he was on our episode, talked about the dangers of comparison. You know, I loved in our conversation getting a glimpse of Bryan's journey and sort of his evolution on his faith, on his, you know, his willingness to accept new challenges. It's inspiring.
Yeah, and I think that you know, he hints at some early tragedy in the family, but he highlights the positive things that came from that, where you know he gets into this idea of like, he uses these words to describe his family. His parents are deep people.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. I love me some deep people, right? When you and I interact with deep people, they end up being on our podcast.
Yeah.
Right. Because I mean, there's just a depth to it. And the idea, I mean, what a compliment to his parents. And Bryan Bunker, man, you're a chip off the old block. I mean, he's deep people.
Deep people. Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought, you know, this discussion of transformation that we had with Bryan and was inspiring as well. And I think, you know, I hope, you know, we're all kind of sitting, looking at ourselves saying, all right, what changes do I need to make? Where areas?
He asked the question, who do I want to be?
Yeah. Who do I want to be? I love it, man. I really felt like if, for me, just where I'm at in life, and looking at myself and the changes I want to make, there was things said tonight that really just kind of hit me right in the heart, right? And I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, for the listeners, if you can listen to how he resets after a day of slaying dragons, he says, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's powerful. And I think that's one of the most special moments I've had on the podcast, honestly. Like, what's it all for?
Yeah.
You know, and asking these questions, who do I want to be? I think that he's got to figure it out. You know, one thing we talk about flipping the switch, If there's no electricity connected to that switch, you're not flipping nothing. And I dig that because I've gone through the motions before of flipping switches. And I'm really hopeful, right? The identity and the script that we've got, who cares if we tried and failed?
Yeah.
We try again, right? We try again, and we try with principles, and we try with atomic habits, and we try with these things that we know are true principles, apply them to our lives in small ways, and just play the long game. He talks about that, right? Play the long game and just watch those results change.
Yeah. And you made reference earlier in our episode to Lester and his discussion of activate. Yep. And I really kind of feel like when you listen to these podcasts, and it's totally unintentional. I would love to say that we do this on purpose, but it's unintentional. But these things tie together. And Bryan's discussion about transformation, about finding the why, and about flipping that switch with power, and then thinking about Lester saying, let's activate, let's 10x this.
10x.
Right? I think that there's some motivation there. So I hope that everyone loves the time that they get to listen to Bryan Bunker. I know that as much as you and I did, Mike, but Bryan,
thanks for connecting me, man.
Absolutely.
Like I said earlier, I mean, Bryan is he comes up a lot in your stories, and I know he's had an influence in your life, and I get it now.
Yeah. And you guys needed to be connected. You guys are very similar. So, Bryan, we appreciate you. We love you. We're grateful for you. To our listeners, enjoy your time with Bryan. Find those things that resonate with you and act on them. It's time to activate. Enjoy your time with Bryan Bunker on The Richest Man in Town.
For whatever reason, I don't want salad.
Yeah. I know.
Like, I don't want to look back and be like, well, that was fun.
Well, this last weekend, Memorial Day weekend, I ate like a pig for 3 days, dude. And on Monday morning, I was like, all right, dude, it's time to own it and get on that scale. And I stepped on that scale, and I knew it was going to be bad. I was just like, what the?
Well, at our age, we can't.
No, you can't.
You can't. I mean, you're going to pay for it, right?
And I'll go out with Ricky, and we'll do a cheat meal once a week. But even then, I'm like, I'm not going like I used to do, Yeah. Like the other night, she's like, hey, we're going to get Chick-fil-A. What do you want? I'm like, the wrap. She's like, do you want like some nuggets or a mac and cheese? I'm like, no, I want the freaking wrap and lemonade, and that's what I want. And just bring it here. Let me choke that sucker down and be done.
Because I gotta disconnect what food does for me.
Yeah,
I gotta disconnect and realize that that thing, life is about life. It's not about sugar.
Yeah.
Right. And I got to make that disconnection, because in my mind, good times equal good friends, good food.
I totally agree.
And I got to make that separation in order to get in that mode that you're in. Right.
Yeah. But it's
because I just hung out with Gavin Spencer this weekend in Lake Tahoe. I could tell you what went down.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You could fill out the menu of what went down.
And I'll tell you what, Mike, it's weird, man. Like, I used to like to eat and just be like, oh, man, that was brutal. I don't want to touch that feeling.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to feel, I told Ricky, I'm like, I don't want to feel full. Like, I don't want to eat and feel like, oh, man, I just don't want that, man. Like,
well, guess what? And the thing is, like, Monday, I wake up and it's almost like the closest thing to a Mormon hangover.
Yeah.
It's like, you did your body no favors.
Yeah. And I'm like, I step on that scale every day. Good news or bad news. Some days it's bad. I mean, I've lost like 7 pounds. And I got 7 more to go, dude.
Yeah.
And I'm trying my damnedest. I was down like 9. And I put 2 more. I put 2 back on.
Well, let me tell you what I do. Right?
Yeah.
This is the thing I've done the last couple of years. for my birthday, I take out a piece of paper. So 47 tomorrow, I'm going to have 47 boxes to check, right? Of 47 things that I feel I need to do tomorrow.
Yeah.
And you know what box number 1 is?
What is it?
So these are not in sequential order that they will be accomplished tomorrow.
Right.
But they will be done, right? And it's not 47 big things. It's 47 things. I sit down, spirit journal. Okay, you're about to turn 47. What are the things you want to do tomorrow? First box that came up,
eat.
Blood pressure check.
Oh. That's a battle too, man. Like on some levels, I'm turning into my dad. It's like I get up in the morning, shower, shave, do all that business, go downstairs, fish oil, potassium. I literally a fistful every morning.
Okay, hold on. So what if we just did, because I'm about to buy into this Jim Rome Athletic Greens. What do you know?
What's the Athletic Greens?
Do you know anything about this?
I don't know.
So Athletic Greens, and this episode is sponsored by Athletic Greens. I don't know even know what I'm talking about, but the idea is, I think you take that fistful of stuff and you put it down into an Athletic Greens. You drop in your water bottle and pound it, and it's everything you need it to be.
Yeah,
powder.
Hey, look, I've told Ricky many times, like, if there's some miracle something out there and I got to drink it and it tastes like barf, but it's going to make me melt it off.
And that's what you do? Then
yeah, let's do it. I mean, I'm taking a fistful of stuff that's all geared around heart health, you know, whether it's all hocus pocus or not. I don't know, man. I'm trying.
Yeah.
You know, I'm 47, bro. I feel good, but I know I could feel better. That's the thing. Like, I feel good, but I know I could feel better. Honestly, dude, I've had it. It's almost like recently it's been like the same idea as with my spiritual journey, which is, how do I tighten the screws a little bit? How do I tune it in a little bit better? Just trying to do that. I don't have any secrets, you know. I don't know, but I do know this. We've got a good guest tonight who's made some changes, man. I think dude what we're talking about, he is done.
Oh, he's there. He's on the other side of that.
He's on the other side of that. And you know, he may be able to shed some light on this.
Yeah, let me throw something out there, right? Like no names on this guy, but I've got a buddy who's battling, right?
Okay.
And that's the spirit of the show, is live like there's a diagnosis without the diagnosis, right? Understand and appreciate what we have in front of us at any given moment. Last night, you guys had an epic moment in your family.
We did,
right?
yeah.
Shout out to congratulations, Abby Goold, kicking footloose, free from high school, moving on, graduating. And that's a moment where you look around and it's like, man, it's pretty dang rich, right?
Yeah.
I'm a little upset because I got a kid who's a week later and he's done. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it would have been good if his graduation was last night, because I don't know why our high school district is graduating June 9th, but it's June 9th.
That's crazy, man.
June 9th.
Yeah.
So this guy is talking to me about this battle, right? He's in round 2 chemo.
Yeah.
And he says the first round of chemo was a breeze, but this one is reminding me I'm in the fight. Right? And I think that there's a spiritual message in that.
Yeah.
Huge, right? Reminding me that I'm in the fight. And I think sometimes this life, we've talked about it before, but this life has a way of dulling that.
Yeah.
Right. 100%. And kind of lulling you off to sleep, like, nah, everything's cool. Everything's cool. And it's like, no. How can we remind ourselves that we are in a fight? This guy's a physical fight.
Yeah.
But all things are spiritual, right? All things.
Yeah.
He's mustering up some courage. He's mustering up some faith. He's doing what he's got to be doing, but I think it's like, man, I got to be honest with you. This show is helping me, but even that, we can be lulled into thinking, no, there's no fight here. Path of least resistance.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
And I think that I think we need to be reminded. Shout out to the Lowry family, right? I hung out with the Lowry family and Quinn Lowry, good friend of ours, one of the OGs on this program, right? He goes back to episode 4, Comparisons, the Thief of Joy.
Yeah.
He lost his father, right? So reminders, man. Reminders. We gotta be living.
Yeah.
And salad's probably a good formula for living a little longer.
I think Carlos Dios and Bellas taught us that. We've ignored it for a few episodes.
Yeah, we have. And even our last guest, right? Our last guest, the thing that scares him about life is it's so dang good right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. One of our most recent guests, Casey Kelly, he dropped it and it was like, I'm in a place where I'm looking around and I don't want to leave it.
Yeah.
Like, okay, well, how can we use that to fuel it, right?
Yeah.
In a fight.
Yeah, it's crazy. There's work to be done, right? Miles to go before we sleep. Right?
And if our guest tonight has got something, he's unlocked, I'm all ears.
All right, man.
I'm a little nervous, though. Right? Because, this guy, number one, Bunker's legendary. Like, I'm not even in the family, and I know this. I know that this guy is the stuff of legends.
Bunker's a legend.
Right?
He's a legend.
So I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
But I'm a little bit nervous because we've had guests before that have said things, and they've hit me right between the eyes, like, what are you going to do about it? And I feel one of those coming on.
Yeah, that's one of those careful what you ask for, right?
Careful.
Well,
live the lesson, right? Live the lesson.
Let's kick it in. Let's see what Bunker's got to say about this.
Let's go.
Yes.
Bryan Bunker. In the Zoom room. How are you, brother? Welcome to the richest man in town.
Doing very well. Thank you for having me. It's good to be with you.
I was just telling Tyler, I'm a little nervous about this episode in particular because when I'm hanging out with Ricky Goold and Tyler Goold, the name Bryan Bunker gets thrown around all the time, and everything that comes after it is usually the stuff of legends.
I have a hard time believing that because I am the person who has hurled a grapefruit at Tyler. So it can't all be good.
Well, legend doesn't necessarily mean good. It means unforgettable.
That's fair point.
Yeah. Unforgettable is absolutely. I would say that most of my time with Bryan is good, but everything with Bryan is memorable. Is memorable. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'll take it. I will take it.
Yes, as you should. So, Mike, Bryan, Mike.
I feel like this was destiny. I feel like this was, one of those serendipitous moments. Like, hey, why do you have a podcast? I have a podcast so I can meet guys like Bryan Bunker.
That's totally true.
I'm thrilled to just hang out with you guys and talk. Especially at almost 9:30 p.m. my time. Now, this is usually when Mindy finds me passed out on a couch, and now I just get to get rubbed up with you guys and talk about.
Well, and there is a world outside of RMIT that just so happens to include Tyler's Celtics on the floor right now.
Yes, the Celtics
against
are playing
the Warriors
ball
in the NBA Finals. Are you calling? You got to call, Tyler. You got to call on this.
Yeah, it's Celtics in 7, man. Celtics in 7. Yeah. Yeah,
I'm gonna go Warriors in 6.
Okay, all right. Bryan, where you at?
6 is a gift, just
I'm going Warriors in 5.
I think I think he's right.
Okay.
But because I like Tyler and I want to throw him a bone, I gave him an extra game. And
look, the Celtics are legit. They're young. But I just feel like the Warriors are gonna have their number.
It's gonna be tough. It's gonna be very, very tough for the Celtics. I agree. But I am a man who is full of hope at all times. And so,
have to be.
Yeah, exactly. That's right.
So Bryan, when Tyler extends this invitation to come on Richest Men in Town, what goes through your mind?
Well, I mean, I was flattered. I got immediately nervous. I wondered if he had worked his way to the very last page of the list of names that he's been keeping. And, but honestly, it was, oh man, I'm not sure I have a story that is that interesting, but.
Well, I'm going to beg to differ right out of the gate, because as we're even having the conversation before you jump on the call, Tyler's telling me you've made some changes and you're on the other side of some things that maybe Mike Freeman needs to take to heart. So I'm thinking that immediately you're going to have an impact, at least on one listener.
I hope that's the case. And for me, it was, hey, any time I get to spend some time discussing or just being with Tyler is worthwhile for me. I mean, he's been one of my favorite people for over 25 years, and we don't get to hang out that much anymore. And,
I know.
And so even if I have to stay up late and be on camera and have other people listen to me, I'll do it just to get some Tyler time.
Oh man.
Where's home these days, Bryan?
Home these days is Wake Forest, North Carolina.
Wake Forest, North Carolina. So I would ask if you're a Duke or if you're a Blue Devil or a Tar Heel, but you might be a Boilermaker or like a Bowling Green, like a Wake Forest.
This is NC State territory, the Wolf Pack. So the Raleigh area is NC State territory.
It's Phillip Rivers time.
It's Phillip Rivers.
Wow.
Time.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. All right.
I mean, it is a great college basketball area.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, it's a blast. Now, I mean, regular people aren't allowed to really root for Duke in these parts. It's it's kind of taboo.
Yeah.
You're right.
But
you're there.
But I'm here. Yeah, it's
nice.
It's a really cool part of the country. And moving here in the pandemic was a bit interesting. It was a challenge for me and my family, but it has really grown us, and it is a beautiful part of the country.
That's all. I mean, honestly, selfishly, we were sort of hoping that you would be disgusted by it and move right back to the West Coast. That was the hope on our side, but whatever. We'll
I think that's something we can explore, right? That move, that decision, that all of that.
So yeah, I'm excited, Bryan. I mean, look, Mike, I will tell you this. I have been married for 25 years. Is that right? Or is it 26?
You better get that right.
It's been a glorious amount of time that I've enjoyed every moment of. And Bryan has been right there the whole way through. So it's funny because I introduce, sometimes people will ask me how I know Bryan, and through marriage, but I could never say that because Bryan is one of my closest friends. That's how I would describe Bryan. So I'm excited that he's here.
That just means you won the marriage lottery, right? Not only do you have
100%,
Ricky, but Ricky's, through marriage, you're actually connecting to people that you consider best friends. So
I want to be around. Yeah, absolutely.
That's right. That's huge. Yeah, and I do the same. When I talk about Tyler, I say one of my closest friends who happens to be married to my wife's cousin.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. That's kind of how it shakes out. So I've been lucky that way. So I'm excited about tonight because we're gonna kind of dive in, Bryan, to your life that you say you really don't have a story about, but I guarantee that's probably not the case. And we're just gonna spend some time and talk. But I do want to tap into this because before you jumped on with us, Mike and I were sort of bemoaning, is that a good word? No, hold on, we're coming at this from totally different angles, Bryan. Okay,
let's back up.
You're right,
because if you're a friend of this program, you've heard Mike Freeman share out these fly-by-night ideas that he has of getting fit, of taking care of himself, and in the end, Hostess wins, right? In the end, the gut buster from Smokin' Joe's Barbecue wins. This episode brought to you by Smokin' Joe's Barbecue. And I'm admiring Tyler is in this process, right, where he's doing the work and he's taking care of himself, and I'm at the stage of like, I don't want to do what's right for me. I want to eat what I want. I want to be 29.
Yeah.
Right. I want to be 29, but I don't want the consequences that happen when you live like you're 29 and you're 47. Right. And so I'm digging my heels a little bit when the alarm goes off at 4:45 to go to the Y. I'm on a week-long streak of like, screw that. Right. I don't want to do that. And, and I think that I think this timing of this episode is just perfect, because maybe I'm going to get a little booster shot here as far as some inspiration and some tips for making some changes. Right.
Well, Mike, let me tell you this. Before January of 2021, I was telling everyone who cared to listen, I know who I am. I've accepted who I am. And this is it. So I'm going to be a little overweight. I'm going to be the jolly guy who you love to go enjoy an amazing
Hold on. Like, this is it. I said those words. Now, the funny thing is I've actually poo-pooed the idea of like, I am who I am, right? Like, that's anti-richest man in town. But at the same time, I'll say, y'all want a chubby Mike. You want a chubby, right?
Chubby Mike is a more fun Mike than
jovial company, and y'all want jovial company, right?
That's exactly right. And the funny thing is I was very active. I mean, I was working out 4 or 5 days a week and things, but I could never get everything reined in together to have it work for me in a way that was sustainable. And a switch flipped for me about a year and a half ago. Got home from spending the holidays in Arizona, so Christmas of 2020, and I just felt terrible. And so, I mean, as we do during the holidays, I had overindulged. I had traveled a ton. I had slept in a whole bunch of different beds, and got home and I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. And my brother had shared an article with me a few weeks before about, or maybe not even a few weeks ago, a week before, about a guy who had been on a journey and kind of figured things out. And a couple of things in there resonated for me. And I connected it back to a book that I had read maybe a year prior called Atomic Habits by James Clear, which is phenomenal, by the way.
Yeah,
and I started to just put a couple of pieces in place and did some things that worked for me, and I haven't looked back. I mean, honestly, I had this approach. I'm just going to play the long game. I'm talking 1 to 2 pounds a month. That's it. That's all I'm going to do. And for me, I'll tell you exactly what it was, like the recipe. I mean, if we're diving in, if we're going to dive in.
Yeah, dive in. Let's do this.
Oh, you know what? You got me a recipe. Now, but I am curious.
Yeah, Mike, but it's not like chocolate chip cookies. You know what I mean?
But I am curious too, because I've read Atomic Habits, and it sounded like you had read Atomic Habits, and it was bouncing around in your head, but the switch hadn't been flipped, right?
That's right.
And
That's
so,
right.
yeah.
So, I mean, remember, there has to be electricity present when you flip the switch. There was no power yet. And so, I mean, I had spent years flipping that switch up and down, but there wasn't really any juice or power behind it.
Talk to me, right? Talk to me, because that's where I'm at.
And so for me, a lot of it had to do with how I was feeling and where I was, and that I had moved to a new place. A lot of my old haunts were gone. Another great book, Willpower Doesn't Work, by Benjamin Hardy. He talks about how important environment is to the way we behave and the way our lives are shaped. And so I think it helped that I was in this new environment where I didn't have maybe some of the temptations that I was accustomed to, the restaurants that I loved, the people that I really enjoyed going out and having meals and cookies and ice cream and all kinds of other things with. So that probably helped. But really what clicked for me is there were a couple of things I started to do. So I don't know if you know the app, MyFitnessPal. I started logging every single thing I ate. Every single thing. And in the beginning, that is painful. It is not very fun to go through and have to put all the ingredients for your dinner in there and all that kind of stuff. But after a while, it becomes second nature, and you begin to see that you eat the same things. And so that's already in your database, and you just put it in. And I started weighing in every morning without fail.
Yeah.
And on Saturdays, I would screenshot my weigh-ins for the week and send it to two of my brothers.
Oh, wow. All right.
I never even asked them if they wanted to be a part of my journey or if they cared about this. I just knew I had to share it with someone who cared about me no matter what, so that they could experience the ride with me. And I had an accountability partner. And so that was critical. And I kept my workout routine, and I actually began to amp it up a bit. The other thing I did was I stopped. I don't eat breakfast, but I have a Fairlife protein shake right around 10:30 or 11 a.m. every day. 150 calories, 30 grams of protein, and it helps me to have a very sensible lunch because I don't feel hungry. And so then I was able to get home for dinner and be sitting on about 600 calories consumed, work out 700, 800, 900 calories. So I'm at a calorie deficit all the way until 6 p.m. Can have a really nice dinner. And I used to buy a lot of these low calorie ice creams. And I would pound a couple of those when I was getting the itch and head off to bed. And that was the recipe.
So can we talk a little bit about the principles behind the recipe, right? So because I think that's the idea. We think about, we can talk behavior all we want, but if we got to talk about the principles behind that. And so like the tracking of your eating, what's the logic there? I mean, I think I can deduce it, but help me connect the dots.
So for me, I'm a very structured person. I need to be able to put an equation together. So I knew that if I was expending more calories than I was consuming, then I would be on a virtuous course, and I would start to. I would have some measure of control of the outcome. So, and because I decided to go simple and just go calories, that was all I really cared about. I didn't tell myself that I couldn't eat carbs or that I couldn't have this or I couldn't have that. It was all just calorie based. So if I felt like eating something, I ate it. I just kept track of the calories. I still do that today. Like I still enjoy amazing meals, and now that I'm in kind of maintenance mode, I made a deal with myself. As soon as I reach if I get to a certain weight again, I have to go back to tracking my calories. And so there's enough of an aversion to wanting to go back to keeping track of my calories that I stay pretty far away from that threshold, because it's not fun. I mean, I'll do it, but it's not that fun.
I'm curious about where you find yourself when you're like, all right, because it's like you said, like I've been in that boat where it's like I'm all in, and I do it for 2 weeks, and then I'm like, I'm out. I want this steak, and I want this, and I want that, and then I dip back into that. But it's not until I was telling Mike earlier, I'm like, I feel like I'm sort of OCDing right now about it, because like I do the same thing. I weigh every day. It's like there's certain things that I want, but then I tell myself, what's going to be the benefit of that? Like at the end of the day, nothing. I'll get on the scale tomorrow and I'll hate myself because of that. And so I'm off. So I'm curious from your standpoint, Bryan, like, you said, well, until I was ready, like I'd eaten in all these different houses. I've slept in all these different beds. I came back and I wasn't feeling great. But there's got to be something deeper, right?
Where you got to be a bigger why,
right? Like where you're looking at it going, look, I've got to, this is why I want to make that change. Like for you, what is that thing? And I'll tell you, for me, I'm looking at, I was telling Ricky this the other day. I'm like, you know what? The thing is, I'm 47 years old. And I'm getting to that point where, kids are starting to be getting married. I'm thinking about grandkids coming around. I don't want to be that guy that sits in the freaking Barca lounger that can't get himself up, and wander around the house and play with the kids. I want to be on the ground.
The guy snoozing in the temple session.
Yeah, dude. I want to be the Craig Olsen that's out in the middle of every game, So that's where I'm at. I want to live. And that's what I told Ricky. I want to live.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at.
And I think that that's a great question for you, Bryan, because I'll be honest, like my why was so I could be skinny in pictures from the Mexico trip I took in February, and check that box, gained weight in Mexico, haven't looked back. Right. So like I need a deeper why, because shallow whys are me flipping that light switch on and off and there's no juice. Right.
So for me, I wish I could tell you that there was just this really compelling reason. This is where Atomic Habits comes in for me, because it's about a mindset shift, right? So it's about, I'm not exercising and eating right so that I can look sexy. That's not why I did it. I did it because I want to feel great. And because I changed my view of who I am. I want to be an active, fit person who can enjoy any activity at any time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's that identity, right? That's that identity.
It's identity. That's right. And it's not about a certain event or the fact that I'm getting to a certain age. And a lot of people, so my daughter got married last summer. And a lot of people just assumed that I was trimming down because I had this big life event coming up. It had nothing to do with it. I mean, it was nice that they happened at the same time, but that honestly had zero to do with it. It just, a few things converged at once, and I was finally able to say, okay, who do I want to be?
I love that.
Do I want to be the guy who feels terrible but is a ton of fun at a meal because he orders great appetizers and knows exactly what to get on the menu and is always down for dessert? Or do I want to be that guy who can still have a great meal, but knows how to manage it and will be down for anything, whether it's a great meal or a 5-mile run or a football game on the beach or whatever it might be. I want to be the guy who can mix it up at the drop of a hat.
Yeah.
And that was not the path I was on. At least you start getting path. I'm 47 as well. I think we're all 47, and you start to realize, oh, I mean, if I'm going to do this, now's the time. Yeah. Because it's only going to get harder.
Yeah. Hey, so we talked earlier before you came on the call. I think I mentioned that this idea of all things. I was talking about a friend of mine who's in a kind of a physical fight, right? He is round 2 of chemotherapy of a cancer of an internal organ, right? So like it's a fight. But in that context, I said all things are spiritual. Right. So this physical fight that he's in is also awakening some spiritual force and some spiritual strength that he's got in reserve. Right. So how has this been a spiritual thing for you?
So, I mean, I have always believed that our physical experience is simply a mirror of our spiritual experience. And all of the same principles are at play. So oftentimes it's figuring things out and finding the discipline, finding the rhythm and routine that bring you closer to your Savior, to bring you closer to the people you love. And And there are things that unfortunately I do, or that we might do, that are a bit self-destructive. We know the things to do, but sometimes we just can't fit all the puzzle pieces together to make them work. Or we'll just get the outer edge built and then we'll walk away from it for a while. And that puzzle is still waiting for us to actively work on. And so for me, it's interesting that you say this, because when I started down this journey of transformation physically, a few things became easier for me as far as my spiritual health is concerned. And so I was able to develop a routine where in the mornings, I have about a 25 to 30 minute commute. And so I'd get home from work, I'd get ready, and I'd start going to work. And in the morning, it was, I would listen to scriptures for a period of time, and then listen to a podcast about the study for that week, those scriptures. And then I've been doing this for a few years. This might sound a bit odd, but I pray out loud in the car on my way to work. And there's just something that's a little different about praying out loud. And most people just think you're on a Bluetooth call anyway. So you might as well commune with your Father in heaven via fake Bluetooth versus one of your buddies while you're getting ready for the day. And that is a whole lot easier for me than stopping and kneeling and praying. For whatever reason, like when I'm ready to start my day, like I can't stop. I have to get in. And I found that my commute has turned into kind of this holy time for me. And that really corresponds quite well with this physical discipline that I fell into. I'm not even going to pretend that it was like this huge epiphany. I fell into it. Things just started to come together. And I think some of it was just this environmental. I had to, for my own mental health, because of the circumstance we were in a new place and a job that was challenging. And I had to take control of the things that I could. And these were a couple of areas that I knew that I could do better in, and I actually had some measure of control over. So that's
yeah. No, I love that idea of control, right? So we recently had a friend who lost his father, and his father was always a man. The descriptions that are coming in as people celebrate his life, he's a man in control, right? Of every aspect of his life. In fact, when I talked to his wife, so Tyler, Carolee Lowry will see you're 25 and raise you 28 more, right? 53 years of marriage the Lowry family had. And she said what impressed her in their first date, one of their first dates, was that he was in control, right? He was in control of the situation. They were river rafting or something, and she just watched how he was able to control his environment and realized that this guy is in control of his life. And
day one.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
That is amazing.
Isn't that what this life is all about? I mean, bridling the natural man and putting some controls on ourselves, our appetites, our passions, our desires, the things that we get caught up in. And to think that day one, this guy was in control. I mean, Tyler, you mentioned Craig Olson, my father-in-law. I mean, the guy was amazing to me because I never knew him to be anything other than completely collected.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Collected.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned the change of environment and how that helped you out. And actually, ironically, sometimes as I prepare for Richest Men in Town chats with Tyler, I go through my camera roll of just thoughts and things that I've come across. And James Clear, I don't know if you're a fan of his 321 newsletter, but it's remarkable. And he shares, James Clear is the author of Atomic Habits, and he's shared a quote: before you try to increase your willpower, try to decrease the friction in your environment. and as you're thinking about making those changes, have that idea, like what is creating this friction, spiritual or physical friction in your life. And like, let's try to eliminate that rub. Right. And we talk about friction a lot, and sometimes we like friction, right? Tyler's that rough stone rolling kind of thing of like life giving you this opportunity to lean in and sharpen on some of the adversity. But some of the things that are creating friction in our lives, it's not healthy, right? It's not a healthy friction in our lives, and we can take a look at those.
Look, life is going to deliver friction for all of us. We don't need to introduce additional friction of our own making.
That's
it's going to come.
Yeah. I just think, that idea, you talking about Ray Lowry being in control on day one. Like, I feel like I'm a slow study. You know what I mean? I'm 25 years into marriage, and I'm sort of tolerable by the people in my house can kind of tolerate me now. Right. I mean, but I also see the value in that. Right. And like, kind of going through these patches where I'm in control, I'm out of control. And especially now being able to kind of look back and identify the things that are, hey, this thing does you no favors, let's delete that thing. I mean, and Mike, we've talked a lot about removing debris from our lives.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same process, right? Whether it's the spiritual hurdles that trip us up, or whether it's food or anything else. I mean, if we can look at it all through that same lens of what do I have to get rid of to make myself a little more stable today than I was yesterday.
Well, our time together with Lester really got me thinking about activating, right?
Yeah.
Activating aspects of my life, because I think some aspects are dormant. And so the other day, we've got you need a budget. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that app and that work, but designating every dollar and putting that dollar to work for you. You talk about an activity, activating some things that maybe were dormant and you just were asleep, fiscally, financially, just kind of asleep at the wheel, right? It's like, do we have enough to make our ends meet? Cool, fantastic. Versus like tracking every dollar.
But I think it's the same principle that Brian's talking about, right? And I think that once you've got to that place where you're willing to say, "Hey, I'm not firing on all pistons right now, and I want to fire on all pistons, and I'm committed to that, whatever aspect of your life," I think it becomes easier then to look at other areas and say, "Okay, wait a second,
it's the same game,
right? How do I do that here?"
Yeah, it's the same game, same principles at play.
And I say all of this from a guy that is struggling in most areas, right? So the reality is, I'm just trying to figure it out, man.
I'm there, but I think too the application of principles, and I mean the spirit of this Richest Man in Town podcast is, hey, let's talk to some people that we admire, and that's why Brian, you're here with us, right? It's not about this transformation that you've been under and you shedding a pound or two. There's so much more to your rich life that I'm eager to dive into, but I do appreciate you letting us in on that journey.
Sure. And it's still a journey. That's the thing is, but it feels different because I've lost weight before.
Yeah.
But it was about something else. I was going on a beach vacation. I wanted to look good for X. It was about how I looked in the mirror. That's not what it is this time.
So do you have someone helping you through this journey?
Not really. I mean, like I said, my brothers have been my accountability partners from the beginning. It was really interesting because I started out, I shared with them, look, here's my plan. They didn't ask, I just said, here's my plan. I'm going to try to lose 1 to 2 pounds a month and just go on this slow, long, sustainable play. Well, I mean, it went a lot faster than that. And I'm like, okay, I started out, I could rough, like, I'm going to be totally transparent and vulnerable with you. I started out about 240, which wasn't my heaviest ever, but it wasn't great, and I'm like, I would really love to get down to like, 205. And so I started going down and getting close to that. And I'm like, well, maybe I can crack 200. Well, maybe I could crack the 190s.
Okay, hold on. I'm coming to you from 234 land, and 200 is impossible.
Not impossible. I thought the same thing. I didn't even set my goal at sub 200 because I'm like, come on, let's not be ridiculous. I'm still.
Hey, Tyler, you know when we went to Kauai?
Yeah.
216, I'd be like, I'm good. If I can get to that, I'm good. In my mind, 200 is like, and I'm Mr. Nothing's impossible, right? But when it comes to that, I got a blind spot or something.
47 years old. I'm not joking about this. I am in the best shape of my life. And I still eat things that I love. So
that's what I want to be able to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, that, I mean, that's it.
I mean, because it's about being the best version, right? Best version of yourself is right now.
No one's more shocked than me, by the way. This is absolutely not braggadocious. It is, holy cow, I can't believe this happened.
Yeah. But it's not it's not just out of the blue. You had some intentionality, you had a plan, you had a formula, and the formula is yielding results, right?
But I had been there before, where it's like, okay, you lose 5 or 6 or 7 pounds, and you're like feeling good, you feel the momentum, and then you step on the scale and you gain 4 back. Like,
oh yeah.
This is worthless. I might as well just eat everything I want.
That's it.
And not letting yourself get there. So that was why it was so important for me to weigh in every day and be able, because it was interesting. I would start to see that, hey, you know, on Tuesdays I go up a little bit, and on Wednesdays I come down. So I would start to compare to the week prior, and now I'm at a point where I know if I get loose on the weekend, I know what's going to happen. On Monday, I'm going to step on. I'm going to go, ooh, that's not good, and I'm going to have to dial it in and just get back to what I know.
Yeah.
So now I'm not afraid anymore. Whereas before, I was living in constant fear that the wheels were going to come off. I was almost expecting the wheels to come off, which is another interesting psychology about all this. I can't just enjoy the fact that, man, I feel great, and this is a totally different way of life than I'm accustomed to. It was, holy cow, how long can I hold on to this? And then at some point, you have to just own that, oh no, this is who I am now. And that's a shift. And I still have to kind of convince myself of that from time to time. And so I mean, I don't know if either of you has ever suffered from imposter syndrome but that is something that I have experienced in the past. And it's akin to that, where it's like, is this real? Is this something I can keep doing? I don't know why we allow self-doubt to creep in, even amidst things that we should be super pumped about and celebrating.
So that's
interesting.
That is interesting. And I'm curious, Bryan, I mean, because, you know, we're 100 and something episodes in, I don't know, into this thing where we've had a lot of conversations. And that is sort of this recurring conversation, you know, this idea of self-doubt and overcoming that. I mean, what's in your journey? What's been the, how have you tackled that, I guess, as that's come up?
Man. So it helps to be 47. I'll just say that.
Yeah.
It helps to be 47. When you have some life experience and you realize that, look, you're going to have ups and downs no matter what. And some of it is just going to come at you, and you just have to weather the storm to a certain extent and ride through it. But for me, it's always going back to what's most important. And am I placing too much emphasis on things that are of little value? And that's usually when things get wobbly for me. When it comes to self-doubt or that imposter syndrome or whatever it might be, it's look, I mean, I have an amazing wife and incredible kids and parents and siblings whom I respect and adore. I mean, what am I worrying about? I mean, why do we need to get consumed with the what ifs or what I don't have, when all you have to do is do a little soul searching and identify what you can be grateful for, and happiness just kind of flows from that. And all of that self-doubt starts to melt away, because you know that there are people who are counting on you and who love you and will be by your side no matter what.
I like that idea of flow, right? It's almost like is that Doctrine and Covenants 121, where without compulsory means it'll flow into thee forever. You know, and I think that's how love is. You know, as I think about how to teach my kids about love and making that choice of who they're going to marry. We're not there, right? I got a daughter serving a mission. I got a kid graduating high school. So we are not there. But I mean, I'm thinking, Bryan, I'm looking at where you're at, and it sounds like you just had a wedding last year, right? So you're in that season. It's like, I would teach them to learn that rhythm and that idea of flow, and not coercion. And I think that's a valuable thing to be able to feel.
Absolutely. And one of my favorite quotes, and I believe it was J.B. Haas who introduced this to me, though, it's a quote from Theodore Roosevelt, which is, "Comparison is the thief of joy." And usually when I get off kilter, it's because I start to compare myself to others and start to say either, why is this happening to them and not me? What do I lack? Why can't I be as good as them? And now I'm focused on all the wrong things at that point. And I'll tell you what, social media is really good at pointing this out. And it's basically a giant comparison machine. And unless you can develop a healthy relationship with social media and its place, it can be a trap for a lot of people to end up in a really bad mental space.
So where are you at in the spectrum of that? We've had recent guests that said, you know, like they've deleted it from their phones, right? And it's like, I'm just not in that game. Where are you at with your social media diet in your life?
I've never been much of a social media presence, if you will. I have all the apps, I have accounts, and I'm usually an early adopter and get in and try stuff out, but I never post. I mean, almost never post. And with our youngest doesn't have any social media accounts. He's almost 16 now. And we just went that path with his older siblings, and they were kind of the experiment that a lot of these companies developed their tools on. And so we just said, look, until we can see that there's a healthy way to do this and that it's a good thing for you, our guidance is, let's not do it. But for me personally, I don't spend a lot of time on social media. I would much rather pick up the phone and send a text to a friend and engage in a group text or call someone and have an authentic interaction with them versus post something or get on and start scrolling my phone. But that's me personally. I know a lot of people who have wonderful things and they stay in touch with a lot of people through social media. So I'm not saying that it's the only way. I'm just saying for me, that's the way I've been able to have a healthy relationship with social media, is just to kind of keep it at arm's length.
It's interesting. I was reading something the other day that said, and I thought this sounded super low. It said that we spend 12% of our days every day comparing ourselves to whatever else, right?
Only 12.
That's absolutely. That was shockingly low. But I wonder too, you know, Mike, as you asked the question, how do you have a healthy relationship with social media? I'm kind of going back in my own mind to Brian's answer earlier of, well, I'm 47. You know what I mean? Like honestly, like I have all the accounts. I like seeing what people are doing in their lives. But if I'm going to have a relationship with someone, it's got to be way more than just a few pictures and a caption. Like for me, it just, like, I don't know, like I'm at this point where it's like, I need the meat, you know what I mean? And then
let's be honest. Tomorrow's my birthday, and tomorrow on my Facebook account, I'm going to be flooded with birthday wishes from people I have not seen or talked to.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And by the way, hey, I'm present with you, Bryan. I'm present with you, but I just broke the rule of podcasting and texted my wife while I was with a guest, and I just texted her and said, I would like Fairlife protein shakes for my birthday.
Hey, now his birthday is tomorrow, by the way.
Yeah.
He's joining the 47 club tomorrow.
I'm gonna try to connect some juice to that switch. I think that I appreciate.
Feel free to make me your guy. I'll give you my cell phone number. You can text me your weigh-ins. I'll let you know what worked for me, what didn't.
Let's go. I appreciate that structure. I appreciate that routine. I appreciate that formula. And I appreciate the fact that you are telling me that 200 is possible.
It's absolutely doable. You're going to look fantastic. You're going to, even more than that,
well,
you're going to feel amazing.
I had a
there
moment.
You go.
Yeah, because that's the idea, right? Because I had a moment today on a Zoom call, and it was like, who's that fat guy in the white shirt that's working really hard? Oh, that's me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Well, good. Hey, again, it is so much more than the journey. So I don't know if you're a fan of It's a Wonderful Life and our boy George Bailey, but that story is kind of an inspiration for our little passion project that we've got going on here with the podcast. But his story goes back to a frozen pond as a young man, right? So like, I'm curious. I'd love to spend some time diving into your life, if that's okay.
Yeah, please.
All right, take me back. Where did you grow up, Bryan?
I grew up in Mesa, Arizona. So both of my parents moved to Mesa, Arizona when they were teenagers. So my dad moved there from the Las Vegas area. My mom moved there from, I think it was New Mexico. They bounced around a little bit, but they both stayed there. And so I was born and raised in the East Valley of the Phoenix area, and thought that was the center of the universe growing up. So
hold on.
Tell me,
Cardinals fan?
Cardinals fan, yes. So I grew up a Cowboys fan because we didn't have a team.
Right, you didn't have Cardinals, right?
Yeah.
It took me a few years after the Cardinals came to the area to convert and to abandon my allegiance to the Dallas Cowboys. That was my allegiance because my mom grew up next door to Danny White, and he was
Danny White.
There you go.
So he was the amazing quarterback from Arizona State University, my alma mater, and then went on to play for the Cowboys. And so that was my team. Tom Landry and Pat, Jerry Jones came in and changed a bunch of stuff up. And but yeah, Cardinals fan through and through now.
Okay. Well, I'm a Seahawks fan, so I've got an old rival with the Raiders, and I got a new rival with your Cardinals. So here we go.
Just when I thought, man, Mike is fantastic.
Yeah, just wait till we dig a little bit.
We'll see how long. We'll see how long we're Seahawk fans without Russell Wilson. We'll see how
it's
that
true.
goes.
It's true. It can be a rough couple of years. Tell us about siblings, Bryan.
Growing up in Mesa, right? Talk to me.
Yep.
Talk to us about family.
So there's 6 kids. I had an older brother who passed away when I was 3, and then me, and then 2 brothers, a sister, and a brother. And all of us are B's. So Brad, Brian, Blake, Brigg, Brooke, Bryce. And last name Bunker. lots of alliteration in our home. And parents often mismatched names with children, especially when they were upset with one of us, which for good reason happened quite frequently. And so it was always interesting when you get a mouthful of B names coming out because they weren't sure which one it was that they were trying to communicate with and get after. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I'm very close to my siblings and especially my brothers. And I often wonder about my oldest brother and that relationship, just because it's a void still to this day. You know, it's when I was young, so he was my hero. I was his shadow, right? And Brad died in a tragic accident. My brother Blake was born just maybe a month, 5 or 6 weeks before he died. And so I went from being the baby to the middle child to the oldest in about a 6-week period. Or maybe a couple of months. And so sometimes I wonder, you know, because I do believe in the whole birth order shapes your personality to a certain extent. And so I wonder a little bit about how I might be different, or how my family might be different if Brad were still here. And so it's interesting to contemplate. But yeah, that certainly had a pretty big impact on me personally and on my family. And in a lot of ways, I think it was tremendously positive, because it's what caused my parents to put their roots down really deep and to figure out what they believed, or what they believe to this day.
Did they have a faith structure going into that, or did that trigger it?
Certainly. Both multi-generational members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and were attending and active, faithful members. But it's different when you face something as difficult and tragic and final as losing a child. You really have to understand or figure out, do I believe?
Bryan, you've alluded to your own faith, and you've talked about some of your habits with your own faith. But do you see that experience with your older brother as you look at your parents and their faith journey? Is that ever present? Is it woven into their faith? Has it become a part of that?
I think so. My parents, for as long as I can remember, have been very devoted, spiritual and deep people. And I think a lot of that stems from the experience, but not just the event, but what you have to go through in order to reconcile it. And so certainly I was very young.
Right.
I also had to reconcile that in my own way. And so it has, I believe that I have been blessed with the gift of faith. And I think a lot of it stems from that experience. I'm not going to get into details, but I was very fortunate to have been given a divine experience at that time that makes it so I won't ever doubt the existence of God. And so that faith has been with me since then.
So in looking back on growing up with mom and dad and your brothers and sisters, how was faith taught in the home? How was that example of faith shown to you?
So, I mean, my parents were constantly doing all of the things that they knew and that they were taught to bless their home with faith and with the spirit of love, and a place where inspiration could be. Now, I mean, look, 5 boys and 1 girl, and constantly trying and starting to have scripture study and failing and trying again and failing and trying again and having a bit of a run of success and then failing. And look, that's my experience as a parent now as well. Yeah. And it's just kind of hard
to explain my family.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I look at these families that seem to be able to go on these 20+ year streaks of never missing and getting it all right all the time. I'm like, I don't know how you did that, but I tip my hat to you, because that's pretty incredible. But I can tell you that in my home growing up, there was always that I can remember a spirit of faith and of trust in God, even when things were tough or bad or difficult. Hey, this is just part of the process. This is refinement. This is difficult, but it wasn't meant to be easy. And that's okay. And I'll tell you what, I share this a lot, but I wouldn't trade my challenges with anybody. Like I know, like I have my own issues, and I've had difficulties in my life, but I know everybody has their stuff, and I know mine, and I know how fortunate I am. And I wouldn't trade my stuff for somebody else's stuff.
That lends itself to one of the questions we sometimes ask our guests. Like, everyone deals, right? How do you deal?
How do I deal? So now these days, I mean, it's really a collection of things. It's a mix of a number of things. But these days, it's exercise. It's eating healthier than I have in the past. It's laughing with people, teasing people I love. Tyler knows what an enormous tease I am. Ask his kids. They know when Bryan's around.
Hall of Fame.
It's going to be merciless, but it's from a place of love.
I mean, I don't know. You're throwing grapefruits at people or something, right?
But that wasn't necessarily that wasn't a highlight from Bryan's teasing repertoire. But I mean, more like, how do I deal more than anything? And Mindy probably doesn't even know this. I deal because when I come home at night, I just need to sit next to her. And that's it. Like, I just need to be near her. And that centers me. Because, I mean, she'll be reading a book, I'll be watching some terrible show on TV or some streaming platform or whatever it might be. But if I get a chance to just sit and be next to her, it's like, reset, I'm good, get up, slay the dragons again tomorrow. And that's what it's all for. Because you have to be reminded, what's it all for? I mean, does it really matter if I'm the best or the greatest out in the world? Or does it matter how my wife and kids look at me at the end of the day?
I'm gonna let's just let that float around, right? Tyler Gould, let's marinate in that a little bit. I think that's one of the most powerful moments we've had on this show. I think that the idea of physically being near to your wife as a reset. You know, we've had I think of Bob Gephardt, right? Coming home and just sitting down and checking in with his wife at the end of the day. And it's like, are we good? Right? As a practice, as a routine. I think that's powerful. How can we get, Bryan, I saw something clickbait today, came across. I didn't click on it, but it was like, they must know the algorithm, right? It's like what Mormons must believe, like a must, right? Like taking agency out. But it got me thinking, like, I look at my own life and I look at my own faith journey, and I think of my children right now and where they're at in the season of their life. And how can I get from a belief in faith being a chore to a quest, right? You talked about this refinement process. How can I get myself personally, my children as their parent, as their guide, as their cheerleader? Any thoughts on how I can bridge that from, hey, that act of faith is not a chore, that's actually a quest to be refined and better?
And so, Mike, for me, the last 10 years have been really a flip. And I would say that in the last 10 years, I've been able to move from a very extrinsic view on faith and what it is I have to prove to a very intrinsic motivation. And so for me, it's no longer a chore, it's a check-in. And it's, okay, look, I know where I'm falling short, and I'm giving myself some grace that I'm falling short. And so when I'm driving to work and I'm saying my prayer out loud and I'm saying, look, Heavenly Father, I know I'm not doing so hot in this area. Can you please help me out? Or this is something I'm struggling with or need a little bit of guidance on. This is, or you might have a check-in with Heavenly Father and say, like, are we good? Like, I know I'm a knucklehead sometimes. I know it's hard for me to learn lessons in certain areas. And I know that I don't do a good job of expressing my feelings to my family and how important they are to me. Can you help me there? Or can you put it in their heart and let them know how I feel and help me get better at this? And so to me, rather than allowing others to put upon me what my faith journey should be, or my devotion to my Heavenly Father is, and how that is manifested, that has to come from me and from within. And once I shifted to that, not only did it become stronger and more powerful, it was very liberating, because now it wasn't about how so-and-so looked at me at church, or how they responded to my comment in Sunday school. It's, hey, that's okay. We might be in different places. They might see things a little bit differently. I learned from that perspective. Palms up. You want to be open and listen. And hey, we're all doing our best to get a little bit closer to our Heavenly Father, and that's for me, giving ourselves permission to do it in our own way is really important.
I'm curious, Bryan, as a dad, right? You got 3 kids, and as a dad looking at your children and the journey that they're on, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you influence? How do you guide them in their faith journey, right? Because I think sometimes I look at it and I think maybe it's more difficult now, I don't know, than when I was a kid. I think there's more distractions. There's, we talk about that comparison, and at 12% to me is like, maybe at my age it's 12%, at their age it's like 84%.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious, like how do you help kind of keep the guide rails up for them as they're kind of navigating their own faith journey?
Yeah. So again, for me, first and foremost, they have to feel your love for them. Otherwise, nothing else is relevant. So if you allow their faith journey to be more important than them feeling your love for them, then something has broken down. And that's hard sometimes, because that faith in Heavenly Father can be the balm to what ails them sometimes. And so you just want you want so badly to just say, if you'll just do this, I know what peace and comfort will come into your heart and into your life. But it's interesting, because I've had a recent conversation with my mom about parenting adults or pseudo adults. And for whatever reason, I had this mental block that as soon as my kids graduate from high school and I send them off to be somewhat independent, either at school or on a mission or some other place, that it becomes easier. And I could not have been more wrong. It's like graduate level
because I'm thinking that right now.
Yeah, no, it's like PhD kind of stuff. You got to start writing all kinds of academic papers and reading super difficult. I mean, it's because now everything becomes influence. It's no longer through sheer demand.
I am the father, you are the child. You're
control.
It's no longer that way. Not that it ever should have been 100% that way.
Sure.
But it's 100% influence at that point. And they have to be able to view you as a parent and as a father in a way that they want to solicit your guidance. And they want to have your input and feel that even if they decide not to take it, they appreciated the opportunity to have it, and you're okay and you still love them. And that's not always easy.
Yeah.
Especially when you can see one of your kids going down a path that will inevitably lead to pain. And that's rough. That's hard as a parent. And for me, this is when you really start to get a glimpse, just a tiny understanding of what our Heavenly Father experiences. Because think about all the kids he has and all the various paths that he's monitoring. And I'm like, wow, I had no idea. I know, this much. And boy, it can be sometimes very difficult to just ride through it with them.
I've had this. So I yesterday I went to Abby's graduation, right? And I was listening to the salutatorian give his little speech, right? Shout out to Spencer Doyle from the Otay Lakes Ward, who was the salutatorian for the ward.
There we go. There's
a quote that he used that has kind of been rattling around my head since I heard him say this, and I'm gonna butcher this, but it's Stephen Strogatz. He's a mathematician, and he says, "In mathematics, our freedom lies in the questions we ask, and in how we pursue them, but not in the answers awaiting us." And I just was, it's interesting, that idea that we have this kind of freedom to pursue the answers, but there's some absolutes out there as well, right? And how do we, how we end up at that? There's a lot of different ways to get there, and this idea
and that's the freedom.
that's the freedom. And this idea of like parenting adults, and I agree with you 100%, Bryan. It's like you try to, it's all conversations, right? We're just having conversations. Let me give you some perspectives, and this is what's happening, and I respect what you're doing, and you're kind of trying to guide it a little bit. But at the end of the day, it's, you know, you kind of got to watch that pursuit, and they're going to end up at an answer. And sometimes, like you said, it's a painful road, and sometimes it's more direct. But I think that is a tough, for me, that's, you know, I remember being a young dad, Bryan, and we lived around each other when we were young parents. And I remember thinking like, oh man, it's so tough. We got all these, you know, and I always told myself, like, when they get to be this age, it's going to be so much easier. When they get to be this next age, it'll be easier. And now I've got kids out in the world, and I'm like, man, you know what was easy? Sitting them in a high chair, feeding them Cheerios, for crying out loud. Like, that was easy. There's very few choices there.
But it is not easier. And in many
100%.
cases, it's much, much more difficult.
I'm just finding some joy thinking of Bryan's kid driving around as an adult, picking up the phone and calling dad on his drive saying, hey, dad, I got this situation. And Bryan on his way in is praying to his Heavenly Father saying, hey, I got this situation. And the parallels and the influence that Bryan has on his son, and the influence that Heavenly Father has on Bryan in the car, right? It's like, that's the game is influence.
Right.
Even those prayers to Heavenly Father, it's like he's nudging, he's steering. He's like, thank you so much for asking. I'm going to give you a little guidance, right? And the freedom is in the quest that leads us to our knees in asking, not in the answer. Because he's got his answer is going to be that absolute truth.
It's absolutely right.
Right? It's a beautiful thought.
Yeah, and Tyler, you steered me to something. This is going to look, sorry about that. My lights just dimmed, but
that's all right.
Must be 10:30.
Bedtime.
This is smart home automation at its finest. But there was a movie that I can't necessarily recommend, but there was a quote in the movie. I actually enjoyed it. I think it's "Marry Me." It's the one with it's fairly recent with Jennifer Lopez.
I just saw it.
Logan Wilson, yeah. And he's a math teacher, like a high school math teacher. And one of the bits of guidance that he gives to his daughter is that when it comes to these math questions, is sometimes you have to sit in the question for the answer to reveal itself. And we're always in such pursuit of answers that I think we have lost the ability to sit in the question and to allow that to be part of the process. And because it's okay to not have all of the answers immediately. I know we're really accustomed to being able to Google whatever we want, whenever we want, and have an instant answer and have YouTube pull up exactly how we might fix something. But that's not the way our Heavenly Father works. And that's not the way we progress along this eternal path. Sometimes you got to sit in the question. Sometimes you got to sit for a while.
I love that, man.
It reminds me of Thomas Edison quote, when you've exhausted all possibilities, remember this, you haven't. You know? And sometimes we have the solutionitis, and it's like, I'm going to drive up to the drive-thru, I'm going to get my Mexican pizza, and I'm going to get my answer to my question. It's like, that's not it.
Is Mexican pizza back? Is that where we're at?
Apparently, like the supply chain wasn't ready for the demand, the demand for the Mexican pizza.
Hey, don't get me started on supply chain. I hear I can't go have movie theater popcorn when I go watch Maverick.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, supply chain movie theater popcorn shortage.
Where's that
Maverick, by the
coming
way?
from?
Oh, good stuff.
Really? I haven't been there yet. I thought
it's on the list tomorrow.
Yeah.
It warrants a bit of a rewatch of the first one, just so you can reconnect to Goose before you go see Maverick.
I got to be honest with you, like total sidebar. I watched the first one the other day just in preparation for this.
Yeah.
And I was like, and when I was a kid, man, I wanted to be Maverick, right? I'm watching it now. I'm like, man, this movie's kind of cheesy. It's pretty cheesy. The first one is super cheesy.
No, I rewatched it, and I've learned that, and this is one of those things that, like, you know, have you changed your mind about anything recently? Maverick was kind of a DB,
big time,
and Iceman is a sleeper hero in that movie.
Yeah. Iceman was dropping wisdom on Maverick in that movie,
and Maverick was like
Maverick. I mean, the fact that Iceman is back in Maverick. I'm not going to spoil it for you.
I'm excited about it. All right, so we digress, but
whoa, he's dropping that and walking away. I'm spinning. Iceman is okay. Anyways, wow. Okay.
I do like that idea though of and again I feel like I have this tendency lately to like I'm the old guy, you know, like back in my day, you know, blah blah blah. But silence is something that we've all but erased from our lives. I mean, I was just thinking that, you know, a few months back we were watching TV. I told the kids, come down, let's watch a movie together, you know? And so they come down and we're all sitting on the couch and I'm watching this movie, and about 20 minutes in, I look over to my side to look at the kids and they're all on their phone, right? They're just like, and I'm like, did you see what just happened? They're like, no, what happened? Can you rewind it? Right. I mean, like this idea of being able to focus and silence and look at one thing is a skill that I don't know if it's diminishing or is that just the old guy? Am I just old saying that?
No, we're losing. We're losing
that battle. It's interesting you say this, Tyler, because Harrison and I had a conversation. Harrison is my youngest son. He's almost 16.
Hey, you didn't hit all your kids with H's, did you?
I don't think so.
Okay.
No, we got Brad, Cameron, and Harrison.
Okay, all right.
We got the full spectrum. We're all over the alphabet.
Yeah, we didn't stay with the B's and all the alliteration.
Okay.
But Harrison and I were discussing the other night, and I made the suggestion. I'm like, you know, we really should have like a 1 to 2 hour period every evening where devices are off limits, and you know, just to be present with each other, even if we're all watching a show together. At least it doesn't give us the temptation to escape into that, you know, 5-inch screen and start chasing. Whether it's for him, it's games or something else, because he doesn't have social media. But for me, it's emails and Microsoft Teams and work and some other things. Or I will say Instagram Reels sometimes gets me because there's some funny stuff on there.
There's some funny stuff, absolutely. There's a good fail video. I've never hurt anybody.
Yeah, there's some interesting recipes on there as well. But yeah, it's and unfortunately, I do think it is driving a bit of a wedge between our closest relationships, because it's. I mean, when's the last time that you waited in a line without pulling your phone out?
Yeah.
And if you're doing that, I mean, we used to strike up conversations with strangers.
Or think.
We don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Or we used to think, right?
Or we used to think. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, look, I'm guilty of it. That's the thing. Like I look at it and I see it from my kids and I'm like, that's what they know.
Yeah.
Right. I'm the old guy in the room. I know what standing in line without a phone looks like. I know what a payphone looks like, right? Wandering around to call your mom. But that idea of silence and I see it. It's a battle that I fight.
Yeah.
You know, I've got to turn it off. I don't need it right now.
Yeah.
Me replying to an email at 10 o'clock. What does that do?
You're right.
Nothing, right?
I was in a professional setting and they were talking about, you know, the idea of trying to meet that workforce need. and trying to get connected to this next generation of workers, right? And like trying to understand the differences, like, hey, old man, that phone for you is maybe a resource. This next generation, it is an extension of their self. It is an extension of their brain. It is how they, right? They're in a meeting, they pull out the phone to take notes. So you and your cute little moleskin notebook, like that's not how it's being. Yeah, right. Because I swear by these things. And they're like, man, that's dinosaur, right? And so I think that the challenge is like, it's not right or wrong, but I freak out. Like if there's a screen on, if my TV is on and my kids are on their phone, I'm the old man yelling, pick a screen. Like pick a screen, but we're not doing this.
But I think it goes back to that idea of, Bryan, you talk about being in the car, right? And you have this routine. And part of that routine is you with nothing, praying, meditating, thinking, right? I mean, I think that is not that's the exception, right? The rule is
swimming upstream.
Absolutely. But I think that we can all agree that there's a ton of value if we can delete some noise and have to come face to face with our own thoughts, right? I mean, you talk about introspection and self-evaluation. That's not happening when I have Spotify on in my car, right? That's not happening. And I'll tell you that because I agree with Bryan. Some of my most valuable times for me by myself is in the car when I have nothing on and I'm just thinking. But you know what? When those thoughts are a little overwhelming, it's real easy to flip on Spotify and drown that out, right?
Yep.
So I think sort of cultivating that skill of being able to be, like you say, Bryan, sit in the question, that's a big deal.
And Mike, it's interesting. You said pick a screen, and that's for me. What I'm really saying when I say pick a screen is, hey, pick me.
Mm-hmm.
I really wish that we were better at connecting. I wish that I was more disciplined at saying, hey, let's play a game. Let's play Peaky Cheaty. Let's go over and play
man. Let's go.
and because that's what 20 years from now will be meaningful.
Yeah.
But as I was listening to Tyler talk about that space and that reducing some of that noise so that we can think, for whatever reason, maybe a couple of weeks ago, you sent me Rudyard Kipling's If.
Yeah.
Right. And there's that line in there that says, if you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim.
Yeah.
Like there's something about thinking, but then there's something about doing something about the thinking, right? Because it's not the thinking that's going to change us. It's the thinking that leads to, I'm going to shape my environment. I'm going to shape my life. I'm going to make changes, atomic level changes that are then going to help me be the best version of myself, right? And I think that it does start with that thought.
Yeah.
And there is that noise is intentional. Let's be real. The noise in our environment is intentionally designed to not get us thinking. But then there's also the temptation to like, okay, I thought, check, cool, on to living my life, right? So how do we bridge that thinking so that it's not, the thought isn't the aim?
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting because I think about me personally, those moments where I have clarity on the changes I need to make, the adjustments that need to be done, for me, for the family, for my relationships, for professionally, those are all born out of those silent moments.
Right.
And if I'm being totally honest, there should be a lot more of those moments, right? There's a lot more progress to be made that I sidestep because I allow that noise. And so I look at my own kids, and I've probably done a poor job. I mean, quite frankly, it's too late for some of them. They're out the door, dude. But the reality, I got one left. I'm going to fix it, man. But,
Gwen's our last hope.
Our last hope, Gwen and Harrison. Come on, man. But, I do think that I even with my kids that are out of the house, I want to be better at communicating the value of that. And I think they know that, right? Because we have kids. I think the three of us here have kids that are on, some of them are on pretty similar paths. And we can say, well, we're attempting to continue to, like you said, Bryan, influence. But man, if we're not doing it ourselves, you know what I mean? If we're not doing it ourselves,
but I think the key is, again, to that doing. What if I died tomorrow, and in this bookcase right here, I got stacks of these, right? Yeah. And my kids pour through them, and they think, man, that'd be kind of cool if the world had these, like if this was Dad's world.
Yeah.
Not just on paper thoughts, but actually like, man, I would have kind of liked to know the dad that existed in these notebooks. Like, how can I convert that into actually like, yeah, that's the guy behind those volumes of thoughts and those sacred moments.
Rewind for 20 years. I mean, revisit who you were 20 years ago. And if you introduced yourself to him, what would he think of you?
Yeah.
I mean, I guarantee you he's going to be celebrating so much of what you've become or who you've become.
Yeah, I dig that. That's almost like that, Tyler, that beat yesterday, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, for me, I have said this, and I would give anything to have that weekly coaching session with the 25-year-old me. And to say, man, all these things that you think are important, dude, let it go. That stuff doesn't matter. And these things that you do with your kids, knock that off. And these things, I mean, just, allow yourself to be flawed. You don't need to pretend to be perfect, because you're really putting so much pressure on yourself that it's becoming difficult for the people you love to see who you really are. And that's, I don't know, there's so much that 25-year-old me just felt like had to accomplish and prove, that I think wasn't that important.
As you do look back, Bryan, this idea of hinge moments, right? This idea of a conversation or an encounter or an experience that changes everything. Is anything pop to the front of your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I have a few. I mean, I shared one with you from when I was 3 years old. I had that experience was certainly a hinge moment.
When I noticed, so you have a son named Brad.
I do. Yeah, so Brad is named after my brother, Brad.
I love that.
And so, I really do believe that my brother has watched over him at certain points in his life. And I think that has been meaningful for my son, Brad. A very important hinge point in my life was the fact that while I was serving a mission, my parents moved. And when I returned home, there was this girl in my ward, my new ward, the congregation that I attended, And I asked her out on a date, and she became my wife. I mean, I think if my parents hadn't moved, that probably wouldn't have happened. And my life would look very different now. And so, I mean, that's something very small. It's not like my parents moved states. I don't even think they moved zip codes, to be honest with you. They just decided that we need to live in a different neighborhood for my youngest brother, and it had a profound impact on my future. Another hinge point was, I was working in the family business. I had been there nearly 10 years, and my brother Brig had decided to go to graduate school, and he encouraged me. He's like, Bryan, I think you ought to consider going to business school. I'm like, are you nuts? Like, I got 3 kids, and I'm on this path. Like, I can't just uproot this and go back to school. Are you crazy?
How old were you?
So, well, that's another thing. It took a little while. It took longer than planned to actually get in and start school, but I was 34 at matriculation, which is a fair amount older than most when they start business school. And I had 3 kids, and I mean, it was such a wonderful time, but it was a leap of faith, and it definitely changed the trajectory of our life. The lessons that have been learned because of that move, and the people who have come into our lives because of that. I mean, I can't imagine life without that. And you're talking about a guy whose relationship center of gravity is in Phoenix, Arizona. And yet I have found myself living in Indiana, in Pennsylvania, in North Carolina. And for me, it's all about being open to opportunities, open to different ways of experiencing life, different ways of viewing yourself and what you're capable of, and allowing those things to happen. Because we close ourselves off to so much because we just believe that isn't possible for us anymore.
Where does that come from, Bryan? That idea of being open?
I'm not entirely sure. I think some of it comes from the fact that I had this experience as a young man to live in Russia and to experience a totally different culture. And I really enjoyed the adventure of learning and growing and stretching because I was in this new and different environment. And I'm a big believer in lifelong learning and development. And I'm not afraid to contemplate what if we said yes? Hey, this opportunity's kind of bubbling up. What if we said yes instead of just outright dismissing it? And Mindy has been wonderful to ask what if as well. And sometimes it has taken a lot of thought and prayer and meditation to get aligned and make a change. But I mean, our life is so much richer because of those experiences. And not all of them have been easy, and almost none of them turned out the way that we thought they would when we started down the path.
That what if can be that disruptor agent, right?
Right.
I mean, sometimes events happen that disrupt our lives, but all the more reason for us to be intentional and awake and present and kind of driving life by asking every once in a while questions like that and keeping ourselves open to possibilities. Do you ever think back, we play this game all the time, Tyler, but do you ever think back on if your brother hadn't proposed that to you? If your brother hadn't said, "Hey, this feels like something you could do."
I don't think I ever would have considered it, quite frankly. I mean, it was like he put a worm in my ear and that thing just burrowed into my brain and I couldn't let it go. And it was very innocuous when he suggested it. It was more like, hey, I see what you're capable of, and I think this could be a really interesting option for you to spread your wings and do something a little different. And I had never even considered deviating from the path I was on.
Bryan, from where you sit now and looking at where you're at now and where your kids are, what gives you hope these days?
There's so much that gives me hope. Like I'm an optimist. I love to see the good in people and the good in this world. And consequently, I don't really watch the news or listen to news. I stay informed mostly because Mindy likes to follow the news, and I get the Wall Street Journal emails, and that's typically how I stay abreast of what's happening in the world. But I don't like my view or the lens of the world to be dictated to me. And I feel like that happens so much in our lives, where we allow someone else to define the lens or the prism we view the world through. Mm-hmm. And so what gives me hope is just look around. I mean, we live in an amazing place with so much opportunity, so many wonderful things and people. And we can either choose to look for those things, or we can choose to look for the things that are broken. It's all a matter of what you choose to focus on. And so my hope is in my faith, in my Savior. My hope is in my family and my kids, my wife. My hope is in the design of this experience we call life, because we're all here to stretch and learn and grow. And so it gives me hope, whether it's going the way I want it to or not.
How do you honor mom and dad?
So
I mean, it's a commandment, right?
Yeah, one of my greatest fears is to disappoint the people I love. And so I honor mom and dad, honestly, by living the way that they taught me to live. And not just because that's what they taught me, but because I have done the work to know what I believe and to have conviction in the way I live. And look, all of us are at risk. None of us is infallible. We can fall. We can become victims of the bad things that are out there. And so you always have to have your guard up to a certain extent. And for me, going to church and praying and having my holy time in my car during the day and giving service and those things, and then sitting down with Mindy at the end of every day, that helps me to remember what it's all for. Because you can get caught up in thinking that you're deserving of something, or you might find temporary happiness in something else. But the moment you think you're above reproach, you are prey for falling victim to the things that can beset you.
Is there anybody else, as you think about where you are in life and looking back, is there anyone else that you would like to honor in this space and time we got with you tonight?
And I have so many people in my life who have been a wonderful influence. You know, no one's more important to me than Mindy. And then my kids are a pretty close second. You know, we've talked about my parents, my siblings. There's something special about my relationship with my brothers, because they are some of the people who I respect most. And part of the power of brotherhood is in not wanting to let down your brothers. And I get to experience that with my actual brothers. And so there's just something about wanting to hold true and stay strong so that you can represent not just your wife and your kids, but your parents and your siblings in a way that they will be pleased, and in a way that perpetuates the family name. And so I'm just so grateful to have been blessed with a family name that means something to me and that I want to honor in the way that I live. And this is multiple generations for me, but other people might not have had the wonderful circumstances that I was born into. And you get to be the first generation if you're in that circumstance. But for me, it's just there's just this joy in connecting with people you love and taking such joy in their successes and in their goodness, and you just want to be part of it. If you don't want to be the best, you just want to be part of this virtuous build, crescendo, if you will, through life.
Mike's made mention to It's a Wonderful Life, and where the title of the show comes from, and really this podcast is an exploration, right, of what it means to live a rich life and what a rich life looks like, and how we can be living rich lives and all have very different lives, right? But I've loved hanging out, and I know that it's 11 maybe where you're at, but I've loved hanging out, and I'll do anything I can to hang out with Bryan Bunker. That's always a good thing. But Bryan, what does it mean to you to be considered the richest man in town?
I knew this question was coming, and it's still not easy for me to articulate, because you have to decide what's most important to you. And Clayton Christensen gave a wonderful address to the graduating members of a Harvard class many years ago, and it later turned into a book called How Will You Measure Your Life? And very much akin to the It's a Wonderful Life concept. And I've thought a lot about it since initially just reading the paper that then became a book. And for me, it's not financial success or power or sort of prestige. For me, being the richest man in town means that I can be relied upon. I can be relied upon by my friends, by my family, by the people that I worship with, by the people in need. And they might be relying upon me for a laugh, for a good meal, for a text when they're feeling down, for someone who can help them move, for someone who will strengthen their faith at a time when they're not feeling it. And to me, that's richness, because it's all centered on relationships and connecting back to that ultimate and most important relationship for me, which is the one with my Heavenly Father and my Savior. And so if they can rely on me, I'm a rich man, because that means that I've put myself in a position to be of value to someone.
I love that answer.
That question never gets old, Tyler Gould. We've been doing this for a little bit, 100+ answers to that question. And every time I hear it, I reflect on the richness in my own life. And I love that thought, Bryan. I love the thought of richness being to the degree that other people can rely on us, including Heavenly Father and Jesus Christ, right? I think that's a wonderful way to wrap up a couple of amazing hours.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it. I would say thank Mindy for letting us steal you till 11, but she was in bed at 8. Like, who are we kidding, right?
So, absolutely. She's early to bed.
That's right.
Kind of person.
That's right. Well, honestly, Bryan, I'm grateful for you, man. You know, I love you and I appreciate who you are. And this has been a ton of fun.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's been my pleasure. It's been an absolute treat to spend some time with you. Tyler, you know, I love you as well. Mike, it's been wonderful to spend some time with you. Tyler has spoken very highly of you over the years. And I certainly have been a fan of the podcast and what it is that you're doing here. It's, I mean, that you're having a wonderful influence in the world. And I can't say anything but thank you.
Well, we
the only
appreciate
thing
you,
we can
man.
control is what happened here with the three of us, and tonight has been time well spent, and I feel inspired and encouraged to do better and be better, and that's that's the name of the game, right? And Tyler Gould, lots of reasons why I love you. I'm going to add Bryan Bunker to that list. So I appreciate our friendship and the connections that our friendship provides to other people in my life. So Bryan, I'll go to war with you, brother. I've never met you in person, but something about this experience does that, right? And I appreciate what you shared with us tonight.
It's been awesome, man.
Thanks for the opportunity. Good to
Thanks,
be with
Bryan.
you.
Have a good night.
All right, bye.
Good idea, Ernie. A toast to my big brother George, the richest man in town.